FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Thank you for joining us on Agri-Pulse.com. Joined today by Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. Secretary Vilsack, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you.
So you've been a reasonably popular agriculture secretary, although at times maybe it hasn't always felt like it, but you've been supported by a number of groups on a lot of different sides of commodity issues in agriculture. Has that support made doing your job any easier?
It has, but I think it's an indication that people recognize that there's great diversity in agriculture and that we ought to celebrate it. Rather than being concerned about whether this production method is better than another production method, let's celebrate all of agriculture. Let's make sure that young people see an industry that's excited about the future and that there are multiple ways to get into the industry. And I've been certainly appreciative of the willingness of many people in production agriculture, organic, conventional agriculture to sort of begin the process of celebrating all of agriculture.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you say that you're kind of a self-described city kid.
I certainly was. I grew up in Pittsburgh in the first 21, 22 years of my life. Fortunate enough to have married a small town young lady from Iowa, moved back to her small town, and I became a small town guy. Had a chance to practice law there and really appreciated the value system and the people and the concern and the compassion of folks that I worked for and worked with in that small town. And that obviously changed my life. 30 years ago, tragedy in that small town create an opportunity. The mayor of our town, Ed King, was brutally shot and killed during a council meeting. And Ed's father, Iliff King, came into my law office after his death and said, look, my son's work needs to be continued and completed. Would you consider running for mayor? Because of being inspired by then Senator Biden, who was running for president, who said the penalty for not getting involved is that people less qualified than you end up governing you, I decided to give it a shot. Didn't expect actually to win, but surprised on election day when I got more votes than the other guy, and I started my public career.
So if not for your wife, and I believe you were working for your father-in-law at the time,
right.
If not for your wife and your father-in-law, do you get involved in agriculture policy, do you think?
Well, I think it would have been difficult because my work as a small town lawyer involved initially doing income tax returns for farmers. And that was my first understanding of how difficult the farming business can be, how risky it can be from a financial perspective, and how deeply concerned farmers are for their families and for their farm and for their livelihood. And then I represented farmers during the 1980s when we saw serious depression hit the farm country and farmers were losing their farms, and how difficult that was. I worked really hard to try to keep as many farmers as possible on the land, and I think that probably was what really shaped my interest in rural development and alternative opportunities for farmers.
What would you say was your best day on the job as secretary?
Oh, every day.
Every day? Come on, there's got to be one.
No, seriously, every day.
You passed a farm bill, you passed Trade Promotion Authority, Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. Anything in particular jump out at you?
GMO labeling stuff was important. The opioid bill that was recently passed by Congress, certainly important. Seriously, I'm not kidding when I say that every day I come to this place, I'm just so incredibly grateful. Because every day something happens here that impacts positively the lives of children, or the lives of rural Americans, or the lives of hungry people around the world, or a farmer who's getting that first loan to start a farming operation. It's an exciting place to be, incredibly dedicated workforce. So every day, I can't think of a single day that was any, I have many memories of trips that I took with the president and that kind of thing. He was very kind to allow us to go up to Camp David for a couple of times. I mean, I remember events like that, some tremendous events over at the White House, special dinners. The trip to Cuba was really an important trip. The trip to India with the president, multiple trips to China. I mean, this is a great job. It's a great job.
So kind of on the contrary then, is there a worse day or a worse moment or a time where you were really kind of, I don't know if down in the dumps is the right way to put it, but a rough moment during your tenure?
Obviously the issues involving Shirley Sherrod from Georgia, where she was unfairly and unjustly berated in the media for something that was false news, fake news, if you will, and the difficulties surrounding her circumstance. But we tried to make something positive out of that very difficult experience. It led to the Strike Force Initiative, which is focusing resources on persistently poor areas. It led to greater opportunity within the department for cultural transformation. So at the end of the day, while that was a difficult period of time, I think it actually was something that we figured out a way to improve the department and improved opportunities. So even though it was a bad day, we had a good outcome.
Now, kind of probably the main factoid that goes next to your name whenever you're reported on in the kind of the more traditional publications, not necessarily the agricultural press, is that you're still the only original Obama cabinet member still on the job. But the Washington Post reported that in 2015 you went to President Obama, kind of expressing a desire to resign.
Well, what I basically told the president, it started with my 7-year-old grandson who came to the door of our home in Iowa when we were there over a weekend, and it was early in the morning, and he came over, knocked on the door, and wanted to know if I could come out and play. And I was really tempted at that point in time just to go out and play, but I had work to do, and then I realized his mother didn't know he was over our house asking to come out and play, and so I realized that I had spent a lot of time on this job away from family and friends. So I went to the president. But during the course of the conversation with him, I recognized and realized that if I was going to sacrifice time away from family and friends, then I had to continue to be challenged. And I have such an incredible team here at USDA that they made my job too easy. I just didn't have as much to do because they were solving problems. Problems weren't getting to my desk. They were avoiding problems. They were moving things forward. We were doing records amounts of work, and I just needed additional challenge. And at that point, the president said, well, why don't you take on the opioid issue? And that obviously meant a lot to me because of my mom's circumstance. And it gave me something to come to work to do. And it was actually, this has been an incredibly busy year. I haven't had to worry about what I was going to do from day to day. In fact, if anything, I've been on the road quite a bit. Now, I feel good about the fact we'll finish strong, and I feel good about the fact that we'll have the opportunity to spend more time with family and friends as a result.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get close to wanting to resign? I mean, did you have offers to go elsewhere, or did you ever kind of really think about, this might be the end of the road for me?
I had very specific offers in the university setting, very specific offers in interest in the private sector and in the nonprofit sector, and each time, when it came right down to it, I just didn't want to leave because I felt that there was still work to be done and that I wasn't ready. Look, I left the governor's office in Iowa voluntarily. We don't have term limits in Iowa. And I often said, and I think with some degree of confidence, that I could have won an additional third term, but I left after 2 terms. And I honestly thought that I would be okay with that decision. It turned out that I had a hard time with it, that I missed the opportunity to serve. And so when this came up, I approach it with the understanding that, and I've been telling all the young people who are leaving now for their next job, that they're going to have a hard time making an adjustment. Because when you're in a situation where you're impacting and affecting positively millions of lives every single day, and you move into a different job, it's a transition. It's a difficult transition, and they need to be prepared for it mentally. They'll find themselves at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon thinking that they hadn't worked very hard because the pressure won't be quite as much or the stress won't be as high. They just need to make sure that they cut themselves a break and understand that they're going through a transition from an incredibly important, fast-paced, amazing opportunity to one where they now have a little more time for personal reflection, a little more time for friends and family, and they need to take full advantage of that part of life as well.
I had an ag lobbyist tell me that specifically during the GMO labeling conversation, when you guys brought everybody together for that conversation, said, I think the Secretary really got frustrated with us. First of all, is that accurate, and how often did that happen? How often did you get frustrated with the industry that you were working with?
Well, I wasn't the industry. It was frustrated with what I knew was the common sense ultimate solution to this, and getting people to get to that place more quickly. I guess I was impatient because I really believed that there had to be greater transparency, that process was not going to go away, that consumers were not going to no longer request or require transparency. At the same time, I also felt very, very strongly that you can't disparage a product that has no scientific basis when you suggest that it's unsafe or people shouldn't consume it. So I was frustrated in the sense that I knew where this was going to end up, and I was just anxious for people to get to the same place I was, and it was just taking a little bit longer than I anticipated. But with the good hard work of Senator Stabenow and Senator Roberts and others, we finally got to a better place. And I think the meetings that we did have opened some eyes and opened some minds to exactly how this was ultimately going to have to be worked out. Producers, I think, recognize that they can't be defensive. They have to be open. They have to be transparent. They have to be willing to educate. They have to be patient with consumers. On the other hand, I think people also recognized on the other side of the equation that you can't have 50 different states making decisions about what a label should look like, because that'll create confusion and instability in the market. So eventually, we didn't satisfy everyone, but we got eventually the mighty middle to take action, and I think at the end of the day, that's where most of the good policies ultimately decided. It's just making sure that you can convince enough people to be part of that mighty middle to get things done.
What are you going to miss most about the job?
Well, I jokingly say that the only thing I would like to be able to take with me is the plastic placard that says police vehicle in the vehicle.
It's got to be really convenient in D.C. Really convenient.
It's convenient everywhere. Look, I've been really well served by the security detail, and they take care of me in incredible ways. You're going to miss the people. You're going to miss the people. You're going to miss the bright young people that I've dealt with and worked with. They're just an amazing group of people, and every time one leaves, I think, well, boy, it's going to be really hard to replace him or her, and it turns out that there's just an ongoing, steady stream of people who are genuinely committed, passionate, work hard, are anxious to learn, and want to do good. And it's optimistic, it's hopeful when you're around folks like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's been reported pretty widely that you're working on a transition document, a letter of sorts to your successor. I think you've said it's in the ballpark about 24 pages long. Do you expect it to get longer?
No, I think it's pretty well cooked.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time on it. And I just want to make sure that some of the smaller things that you may not think about when you come into a job like this, that there is at least an awareness. So this is a document potentially that my successor may read or may provide to their chief of staff to say, hey, these are ideas, these are thoughts, we need to just keep them in the back of our mind. There are issues that in a large organization that involves 85 to 90,000 people, that is in several thousand offices here and around the world. There are issues that can crop up that can complicate your day, that can take you off of whatever your main priority is. And I want to make sure that those smaller things don't disrupt whatever priorities the next team has. And I just think it's a courtesy to give them the insight. They can certainly take the advice or not. They can certainly not pay attention to it, but it's a document that I think it will be helpful to them. Mm-hmm. I hope it is anyway.
Along that same vein, what is the one piece of advice that you didn't get when you were coming into the position of Secretary of Agriculture that you really wish you would have known prior to?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's to recognize the dynamic between career people who have worked here at USDA for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and the political appointees. We commonly refer to the political appointees as sprinters and the career folks as marathoners. And those are two different running styles. They get you to the same place maybe a little quicker, maybe a little bit longer. And I think it's important for the political folks to understand that career folks have been here, seen that, done that, been around the barn several times, that they need to be respected, they need to be brought into the process because they can be incredibly helpful. I remember one of my first visits with one of our attorneys here. And I, as an attorney myself, I was kind of aggressive during that meeting. And I realized afterwards that I didn't handle it particularly well. So I brought the individual back, and I'll tell you, over the last 8 years, that office and the individuals and lawyers in that office, they've just done amazing work. We've had problems, and they've come in with very creative solutions, and they've put up with me asking to read the law and to, maybe I interpret it a little bit differently, and we have a conversation and discussion. But they're just incredibly dedicated. And I think if you respect the career folks and you understand that they bring a lot of knowledge, and at the same time, you as a political, you bring a little energy, you bring a new creative thought into the process, and that mix can either be incredibly, it can work incredibly well, or it can be particularly difficult if you don't have the right attitude. So that would be one suggestion, which is respect the career folks, listen to them, bring them into your operation, and challenge them, because they will respond.
And I'll save the toughest question for last here. What would you say is your favorite item of food available at the USDA cafeteria?
Let me think about that. There's a chicken salad's really pretty good. The chicken and cheese sandwich is good. And there's really good, there's a good roast beef sandwich you can get from time to time. So I eat lunch at my desk quite a bit because it's an opportunity for me to work. So I've recently been eating a lot of salad. We seem to have an abundance of chickpeas at USDA.
Well, we'll let you go and get back to lunch and USDA cafeteria food. But Secretary Vilsack, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's been a great honor. Thanks.